Update on Rashee Rice is he's still going to miss time, but it's going to be a little bit later than we thought. And who to watch in this upcoming game, I'm going to give you a secret. He wears number 79 today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, Chiefs Kingdom. It is your pregame show for preseason game number 2. We're brought to you by Monarch Money right now. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL. That is at monarchmoney.com. You're going to get 50% off of your first year. First year is rookie time. We're going to talk about some of them coming up. We have a great show for you. We've been doing this show for 9 years. 9th preseason on Locked On Chiefs. We're here every day for you. That whole thing is across the network, so thanks for making us your first listen, but make your next listen another Locked On show because everybody's doing it all the time. We got it all for you. Here on YouTube where we begin and then out to all the audio platforms. You can find us everywhere you can find a podcast. If you need that much more, we'll give you breaking news, our opinions, and insights at the text line at 816-357-8781. You can get into that. You can read Chris over at KC Chiefs Corner. You can find me at NFL33.com and rgrfootball.com. We have a ton to go over. There are long shots in this game to make some noise, to make themselves a spot on either the 53 or the practice squad. We're going to talk about them coming up. Players you cannot miss. You need to focus in on these players. That is next. But we start with the news of the day. That is Rashee Rice has a date. A judge has set a date of September 30th. There's still an arbitration thing that can happen. But if the legal system follows and there's no arbitration reached before that, we should have an answer on September 30th of what the legal system is going to do and therefore what the league is going to do. So a lot later than we thought it was going to be, right? We all were kind of working towards September 1st before the first game. Doesn't look like that's going to happen. Chris, where do you land on it?
I think it's really interesting that they have put this as September 30th. And I think that there are so many different things that can happen. And right now we think it's going to be September 30th. So we think he's going to play the first 4 weeks of the season. We will see whether or not that ends up being the case. And the other part of the reality is it could be the entire season for all we know at this point, because the reality is that the last time this judge actually tried a case, she took a couple weeks to make a decision and then it was appealed. So it could be something that's pushed back even further if it gets to the judge. How this is going to play out is going to be anybody's guess. The one thing I will say is, as it sits right now, it looks like Rashee Rice will be available for the Chargers game. And to me, that's huge news for Kansas City for multiple different reasons. Obviously, it's huge because they need the player, and we can talk about that. But I think it actually, especially when you're talking about preseason games, I think it puts 2 players on notice right now on the Chiefs roster that have to make a name for themselves this week and next week.
Yeah, like it is go time for those guys. We'll name them in just a moment. But before we go, I think we disagree on the impact of what this game does. Assume that it's either a 4 or 6 week suspension and it doesn't come down to 30th and it plays out there. What was your take on the schedule? Because mine was pretty straightforward. I care about the Bills game because I think that could come down to seeding very, very effectively.
No, and I understand where you're coming from on that. I guess I just look at it as they haven't beat the Bills. They're 1-4 against the Bills and Josh Allen in Mahomes' tenure in the regular season. And you're right, it could cost them the wild card. I'm not saying it's not important. What I am saying is I'm not going to worry about him missing the Bills game near as much because they generally haven't won against the Bills. And they generally, honestly, in some games, I would say I don't think that they were trying to lose, but I don't really think that they were specifically trying to win either.
I just hope that it doesn't come down to Rashee missing that and that being something that the game turns on, which I think that it would. Yep. Because I think it's going to be tighter this year. And I do think that the Bills are the next best team in the AFC. I think it could come down to that ballgame.
It could. And if it comes down to that ballgame and they lose and they are the wild card, they're the wild card. They've done it before. They can get back to the Super Bowl as a wild card. Kansas City plays Buffalo differently in the regular season than they do in the postseason. And when I said that I don't know that they've been trying to play to win, I'm not trying to say they're trying to lose. I do think that they figure out what is going to work against this Bills team this specific year, and they use that game as probably more of a preseason-esque type game to an extent, to try some things out, to try to get ready for a game that they figure they're going to play in the playoffs and they have to win, because it has almost always been one of those situations where they've lost in the regular season and they beat them in the playoffs. So it's a different scenario. Obviously, Mahomes elevates his game. And really quick, I keep hearing you say this is the 9th season of us doing this. How crazy is it that we've been here doing this the entire time Mahomes has been in the NFL?
Yeah. There's something to be said for good timing, and I think we had it. So kudos to David Locke, our fearless leader, and the network in general. Now, taking advantage of that in this particular week is across the board. And we talked about the tight ends in particular. I do think somebody's got to step up there, and I think I know who I want it to be. But the wide receivers with Hollywood, I think they're just going to nurse this injury until the regular season, and they're just not going to attempt it. With Rice, he needs to play this week because he needs to make sure that those first 4 weeks, if it really does go to September 30th, are as much as they possibly can be, right? For not just for the team, but for himself. But they also have to prepare other guys to take those reps once he does get to the suspension time. Who is most keen for you this week in preseason game number 2?
Tyquan Thornton and Nico Remigio. And I honestly think everything that we've talked about for the past couple of weeks since the first Rice news came out and we thought that he's going to get suspended for the first part of the season was that there was going to be 7 wide receivers and he was going to go on the suspension list. Now that's not an option. So to me, it's a matter of, do they risk putting Nico Remigio in, cutting him, thinking that they can put him on the practice squad and bring him up to be a returner for a couple of weeks because they want to keep Tyquan Thornton on the roster because they know Rice is going to be gone and Thornton's going to give them more value than Remigio while Rice is gone.
On the offense. Yeah, it's a debate about offense versus special teams and who can help you now, and in particular, who can help you the most during those weeks of suspension. And this is probably the worst case scenario for the Chiefs in terms of trying to get to their 53-man roster initially for the season, because now they have to have Rashee Rice on it, unless something else changes. We don't know. There are settlements that could happen between the NFL and the NFLPA and the judge, et cetera. There's still a process there, but we're planning for it as it is. And so I agree with you. I think, honestly, right now, it feels like the coaching staff is leaning outside of Dave Toub towards the offensive input rather than the special teams input.
Yeah, and the question is do you think you would lose Nico if you put him on the practice, if you try to get him on the practice squad?
Yes.
And it's I agree. I think that you would, and it's not necessarily because I think he's great at the wide receiver position, but he has shown he is competent at returner, and that is a position that is few and far between in the NFL that can do it and do it well. So I think that they risk losing him if they put him on the practice squad. And this might also end up being in a scenario where you have to keep 7 wide receivers on the roster, which completely changes your math at other positions.
It may be. And I will tell you this. There are teams in this league that would bring him in to return kicks, but he would have a much better shot at getting on the offensive field for a different team. But he is not a long shot. He is here right on the bubble. Long shots are coming up later, but do not miss Esa Pole. He is my number 1 guy to watch this week. Preseason game number 2. The rest are coming next.
Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. I've used Monarch Money for at least 7 or 8 months now, I think, and I've loved it. It is awesome to be able to have everything at your fingertips. You see, and it budgets out your money. It shows you what you're spending your money on. It shows you your income in, your income out. It is a fantastic app. You need to go give Monarch Money a try. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year.
And when it comes to players that have to take advantage, yes, the wide receivers definitely have to, but this whole thing just got tighter for a number of other positions as well, in case the scenario that you just mentioned. the 7 wide receiver scenario, if that were to come to pass, it means there's one less spot for everybody else. And so, particularly along the offensive line, you have to take advantage of it. Now, Pole is my guy from pre-draft, and knew he was rough around the edges.
That's putting it nicely.
It is, yeah. He has an opportunity. On a third watch of the first preseason game, it is clear to me that he is a better mover than Wanya Morris is. I believe he is in a battle with Wanya Morris right now to be the 4th tackle. And I believe he's going to get reps with the second group tomorrow night on Friday with this second preseason game. I think it was very clear against 3s that he was drastically better than Wanya Morris was against 2s. So it really has to be apples to apples here. If he is able to play well, or as well, at least athletically, against the 2s in this ball game, like he has in practice this week, where he did get some reps with the second group, I think he has a chance, at least, if he plays as well, to surpass Wanya Morris.
I'm not going to say that I disagree with you. What I will say is I wonder if Kansas City will even give him the opportunity. And I say that because this is a issue of roster building and how are you going to build out the roster. Last year, they put Ethan Driscoll on the roster and they kept him there the entire season. And right now, as it sits, it doesn't look like he's going to make the roster. And that's probably not – he probably wouldn't have made the roster even if he wasn't injured. He may end up on IR. They may end up keeping him. We'll see. But my point is that he played well enough and he showed enough in the preseason that they thought they were going to lose him. Is it possible that they look at Pole and they like him and they say, okay, well, we'll give him some reps against the 2s, but we're not going to put him out there against the 2s because we don't want people looking at him against that level of competition, because there is a stark difference between going up against the second unit and a third unit, no matter who you're playing in the NFL. Most third units, you're going to be lucky seeing any guys really that are going to be on an active roster for and playing a lot during the season. So I'm curious to see whether or not they put him there. It's possible they will. If they do, it is a huge competition between him and Morris, because the reality is that they're going to have Jalen Moore as your right tackle, or they're going to have him at a guard position because they need to get him acclimated to as many positions as they can to use him on the offensive line. We've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't care that they paid him $15 million, because he is becoming a super utility player for him. And there is extreme value there. I'm not so sure he isn't maybe the first person off the bench, regardless of position other than center.
That makes perfect sense. You have the 5 starters. You have Mike Caliendo and you have Hunter Norzad. They're shoo-ins. Those 7 right there, no matter what. I think you have to go to the point Moore is as well. That's 8. If there's going to be 7 wide receivers, there's only going to be 9 linemen. I am convinced of this. So last spot has got to be something that Pole grabs.
Yeah, and I would argue that I don't know that of all of them, I would say that Moore is probably 6, Caliendo 7, and Norzad's 8. I still think Norzad's on the roster, but that could end up being a cutoff with when you start talking about these lower positions. I don't think it will be. I think that they intend on having him on the roster and he will be on it. But when you start looking at the other positions, it's a question. You're only going to keep 2 QBs. You have 4 tight ends right now that you're going to want to keep. How does that play into all the other positions you're talking about? We've talked about defensive end and defensive tackle, where maybe, Marlon was going to be a guy that maybe they could try to find a way to keep. At this point, when you're talking about maybe having to keep 7 wide receivers, there's no way you can keep Marlon as a 5th defensive tackle. Not unless you're going to get rid of a defensive end like FAU. This is the problem you're getting into.
And both those players are other guys that you have to watch very adamantly this week to see what they're able to do, because Norman Lott is coming on. They want to feed him more snaps. He's got very low mileage from his college days. So they feel that they could take that volume. So he's a shoo-in. You're going to keep Jerry Tillery. You're going to keep Mike Pennell. So there's 4 no matter what. It is whether there's a 50 tackle. It is whether you keep 6 at the outside, knowing that some of your guys can rotate inside, including FAU, who has played some inside snaps as well. It all goes into it. I think those guys in particular that you named are the ones that you have to watch. Marlon, I would love for Fabian Lovett to get involved. It doesn't seem that he's in that consideration and is destined for the practice squad yet again. That's okay. If it takes a little bit longer, it takes a little bit longer. I'm intrigued by Tuipulotu, and I've said that since day one that he came to this roster. I think he's definitely somebody to watch. But the other one that really intrigues me is deeper on the defensive secondary as well. And I have to see more of Knowles because I haven't seen enough of it. And I need it to be against better competition. In this game, you got to get him in earlier. And I do think they're still searching for, some of their 3-4 guys who they're going to rotate where. But you got to have that 7-6 guy that you have to make the decision on.
Are you talking Noel Williams?
Yeah. No, I'm Noel Williams is done deal. I'm talking Kevin Knowles.
Okay. You said no. Well, that was the thing that was throwing me off. You said Knowles, and I'm sitting there going, Noel. Okay.
One of two.
Yeah. No, and I understand what you're saying. I think that's going to be something that's going to be intriguing. Can he do something? Can he show up? Can he push his way onto the roster? At this point, he's on the outside looking in, and I wouldn't say I'd almost put him in the next segment as a long shot because I do think that there's value there. I think that he can play. But the problem is there's so many DBs on this roster. And the one guy that I would say I'm going to put in this list for the DB room is going to be Mike Edwards. And it's going to be because what I saw last week doesn't look like a player that should be on the active roster for this Chiefs team. And if that's the case, maybe they could bring him back on the practice squad. But I would rather give that to a younger guy that could maybe come in to be something in the future because Mike Edwards isn't going to be like a one-for-one Deion Bush type thing because Mike Edwards isn't a special teamer like Deion Bush was.
Right. He still could occupy that spot in the practice squad, but you're right. And he's also a known quantity. You're not going to see a whole lot of development out of Mike. That's okay. Right. He is what he is, and he can contribute.
But he's other guys, a lot more than he was the last time he was here. Sorry.
I agree. There are other guys that can do more is what I was about to say. And that means that you have to take a look at those longer shots. There are guys out here that are long shots. We'll get to them next. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy, and it's the best time of the year because the NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. This year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, me and Locked On Chiefs are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, so you should too. Whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league, you can get into it. My main league is over 20 years old, and it's been on Yahoo forever. Make sure you check this out because to celebrate their 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over the 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped the Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated from the league each week until there's only one left standing. And this season, it's just around the corner. Now's the time to get your league together and give it a try in a new mode, whether it's one of the classics, this guillotine, or head-to-head, or you can just join a normal public league like you have in the past. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Now, fantasy can turn on its head at any given moment. And one thing you have to watch out for are these long shots, these UDFA types that come along and get added to the roster at the very end. That's what we're talking about here. And I probably should have already used one or two of them. I have a couple other guys, so I'll let you go ahead and start it.
You're not going to like me, but I'll go with the guy I think it's a long shot, Carson Steele.
I'm just
my issue is it's not the player. It's the roster numbers. Like, where are you going to fit him? Because the only person that he can really take a job from right now, in my mind, is Elijah Mitchell. I don't think there's any chance that Brashard Smith doesn't make this roster.
Agreed.
Not just because of the running back position, but because of his ability to be a returner. I think that Tobe wants to have him as a returner, regardless of whether or not he's going to be a running back. And Elijah Mitchell hasn't looked as explosive, and Carson Steele got reps above him last week. Is that going to be something that flips this week? Maybe. But the other side of it is, the numbers crunch are real, and I don't know where they're going to go short if they have to go with 7 wide receivers because of the Rice situation.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny you bring him up because I was going to do the opposite. Elijah Mitchell needs to stand out in this preseason game number 2. He is at this point, I'm ready to call him a long shot because he didn't do enough last week. And despite being on the field before Smith, we know Smith's going to be there. So it is, what can you do? You're brought in here to be a third down back. You're brought in here to have some pop to your game, to bring some quickness to this game, if not long speed itself. We haven't had a chance to see that yet. And I think that they might see it in practice, and maybe we're not seeing that at this point. But it's got to show up in games as well. And I think for Mitchell in particular, to prove that he has not been zapped by the injuries, he has got to perform this game.
No, and I actually 100% agree with you. I think he's a long shot at this point. I really do think that it's possible that both of those guys aren't going to make the roster. It's possible one of them does, but there's no way both of them are going to be on the roster. That's just the reality of this situation. When you start looking at long shots to take control, I said this yesterday, and I still think that it's going to be something that I'm going to watch a lot of. When you start talking offensive line, I want to see more of Chew Godric. I don't think he makes the roster, but man, when you have Andy Heck talking about him and bringing him up and putting him on the same level as Hunter Norzad, or saying Hunter Norzad is trying to be like Chew, that to me speaks something. And maybe I'm buying into it more than I should, but I got to watch more. And he's playing more positions. That's the other part of it. It's not just that he's, moved up to second team in some instances. It's that he's also playing guard on top of playing tackle. And the Chiefs, they love having players that can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I see him as a long shot too. I don't see him making it, but the argument is there to take another look. And so we have to make sure that we watch him. The other one that I have to say, as much as people want this not to be true, Jason Brownlee is a long shot, specifically because of the Rice thing. This makes it, I think, 5, 6, 10 times harder for him to make this roster because he has to beat out 2 guys because he doesn't bring anything to special teams, at least nothing that we feel that can be a starter level player. And he has to beat Thornton in the receiving position. So for me, he's got 2 guys he's got to jump, which makes it a lot harder for him to make this 53. But I do think unless he goes off, there is a small chance that they could bring him back to the practice squad.
Yeah, and I'll be curious to see if he's able to do anything. And obviously a touchdown catch is great, and his body extension and his ability to go get the ball was something to be impressed by in week 1. But I agree with you; he's a long shot at this point. If the Rice news had broke another way, and you're talking about a potential of Rice being suspended week 1, maybe Brownlee makes the roster. But you're not keeping Brownlee over Thornton. Not after what we've seen with Camp and the fact that Mahomes' first throw in the preseason, and maybe his only throw in the preseason, which is interesting in and of itself, was going to Thornton. Like, he tried to throw to Tyquan Thornton, his first throw. And I guess he would have had 2 throws. But, you look at it, and I don't know how this is going to break out. I mean, you look at all these different players, and you look at all these different positions. You talk about the linebackers we talked about with Matt the other day. Brandon George looked like somebody that could be making the roster or giving you potential to make the roster in OTAs. He's kind of fallen back. Now it's Cooper McDonald. I still think Cooper McDonald is a long shot, but how many are you going to go with on offense versus how many are you going to go with on defense? Generally speaking, in years past, Kansas City hasn't been even on those 2 sides of the ball. Now, whether or not that's the case this year is a whole different question, but they haven't been in the past. It's usually 26-24. I don't know that that's going to end up being the case this year, but it brings into question how you're going to fill this out.
It certainly does. And that brings me to my last guy. And I mentioned Knowles. I got to see Knowles against better competition today, because if he's going to take a spot, he's going to take it from Josh Williams. And I know Josh Williams can put up with the physicality of the NFL. He's proven that. So I got to see him at least against 2s in Knowles to see if he can even come close to what a long shot right now it appears that Josh Williams is.
Yeah. And I think that he's probably on the outside looking in, and it's crazy thinking he's done nothing but play for Kansas City for 3 years, and he's in a position where they could end up replacing him. But the one thing I will say about that is it's encouraging because the corner position is pretty decent for Kansas City for the most part since he's been here. And if he's getting pushed out, that means they should be getting better at the position. They may not this year because I think Noah Williams is probably a year away from really being able to contribute on a large basis. But we'll see how that ends up. It's going to be interesting to see if he can make it. I just don't think he will, and I can't imagine that there's any chance that he will be a practice squad eligible player because somebody's going to take a chance on his size alone.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to talk in the aftermath of this ball game what could be coming down the pike.
Is there any other wide receiver that you think is a long shot that you're really excited to see? I know you talked Brownlee.
No. There'll be no passing to Elijah Badger. We're going to leave him alone. We're not putting anything on film. We're just going to let that lie. So practice squad eligible, he remains.
Fair enough. I do want to see the other wide receivers. I want to see if Oladokin and Bailey Zappi actually get some good play from the offensive line to give them a chance to actually make plays with the offense. Because while Bailey Zappi was really bad last week, he still needs the chance to be able to prove that he can play. And if he can't, that's fine. But it's going to hurt the other players that are trying to make plays on the field with him and the wide receiver. So I'd like to see, maybe Hal Presley or Jimmy Holiday get a chance. Magdalena, I'm curious what they have, because the reality is that more than likely one of those guys that's on one of those guys that's far down the depth chart on the wide receiver list, maybe two of them are going to end up on the practice squad.
Yep.
And it's likely going to happen because of something they do in the preseason game. Not sure what it'll be, but
that's true.
I would imagine we'll have a couple of them.
And I will say this. I think Minshew is going to get most of the reps of the ones. I don't think Mahomes is going to play. I think they're going to let Minshew go out there and play with the ones. That's a quarter, maybe a quarter and a drive, something like that. And then Bailey will get a shot at redemption. I don't think Kelce will play either.
Yeah,
they both showed up on the tarmac with their 1587 steakhouse hats. I think they're all promo all weekend, and that's it.
I missed that. I did not see that. That's funny. I'll be interested. I mean, I can't imagine. I imagine you're probably right. I imagine Kelce won't play if Mahomes, especially if Mahomes doesn't play. I don't think that Kelce will play. But we talked about this earlier. The guy that needs to play is Rashee Rice. And as much as it's going to be weird having him out there without Patrick Mahomes, he needs to be ready to hit the ground running the best way that he can, especially if there's no suspension, because he's got to make the most of it for the first however long he gets to play.
Yeah.
And he is going to have a huge impact against the Chargers in Brazil if he's available to play week 1.
Yeah. Warm up them tires. You got to be ready to start like that light goes off. We want to know who else you guys are going to be watching. Who are you interested in? Leave your comments down below here on YouTube, and we appreciate it. We are going to have a blast. We will have content for you post-game. We know it'll be late, so just be prepared. I'll be a little bit woozy. It'll be just fine. And we will have everything in the aftermath coming next week as well, as we get closer to the last chance stop for anybody trying to make this roster for preseason game number 3. Thanks for being with us today. We'll talk to you then.